Today, we are going to reflect on This Matter of Fear, Bill Wilson's writings in the Grapevine, January 1962. As the AA book says, fear is an evil, corroding thread. The fabric of our lives is shot through with it. Fear is surely a bar to reason and to love, and of course, it invariably powers anger, vainglory, and aggression. It underlies guilt and paralyzing depression. President Roosevelt once made the significant remark that we have nothing to fear but fear itself. This is a severe indictment, and it is possibly too sweeping. For all its usual destructiveness, we have found that fear can be the starting point for better things. Fear can be a stepping stone to prudence and to a decent respect for others. It can point the path to justice as well as to hate. And the more we have of respect and justice, the more we shall begin to find the love which can suffer much and yet be freely given. So fear need not always be destructive, because the lessons of its consequences can lead us to positive values. Fear need not always be destructive, because the lessons of its consequences can lead us to positive values. The achievement of freedom from fear is a lifetime undertaking, one that can never be wholly completed. When under heavy attack, acute illness, or in other conditions of serious insecurity, we shall all react, well or badly, as the case may be. Only the vainglorious claim perfect freedom from fear, though their very grandiosity is really rooted in the fears that they have temporarily forgotten. Therefore, the problem of resolving fear has two aspects. We shall have to try for all the freedom from fear that is possible for us to attain. Then, we shall need to find both the courage and the grace to deal constructively with whatever fears remain. Trying to understand our fears and the fears of others is but a first step. The larger question is how and where we go from there. This is exactly why we of AA place such emphasis on the need for faith in a higher power. Define that as we may. We have to find a life in the world of grace and spirit. And this is certainly a new dimension for most of us. Surprisingly, our quest for this realm of being is not too difficult. Our conscious entry into it usually begins as soon as we have deeply confessed our personal powerlessness to go on alone and have made our appeal to whatever God we think there is or may be. The gift of faith and the consciousness of a higher power is the outcome. As faith grows, so does inner security. The vast underlying fear of nothingness commences to subside. Therefore, we of AA find that our basic antidote for fear is a spiritual awakening. The basic antidote for fear is a spiritual awakening. It so happens that my own spiritual perception was electrically sudden and absolutely convincing. At once, I became a part, if only a tiny part, of a cosmos that was ruled by justice and love in the person of God. No matter what had been the consequences of my own willfulness and ignorance, or those of my fellow travelers on earth, this was still the truth. Such was the new and positive assurance, and this has never left me. I was given to know, at least for the time being, what the absence of fear could be like. Of course, my own gift of faith is not essentially different from those spiritual awakenings since received by countless AAs. Mine was just sudden. But even this new frame of reference, critically important though it was, only marked my entrance into that long path which leads away from fear and toward love. The old and deeply carved etchings of anxiety were not instantly and permanently rubbed out. Of course they reappeared, and sometimes alarmingly. I was the recipient of a spectacular spiritual experience. It was not surprising that the first phase of my AA life was characterized by a great deal of self-pride and power driving. The craving for influence and approval, the desire to be the leader, was still very much with me. Better still, this behavior could now be justified, all in the name of good works. It fortunately turned out that this rather blatant phase of my own grandiosity, which lasted some years, was followed by a string of adversities. My demands for approval, which were obviously fear-based that I might not get enough of it, began to collide with these identical traits in my other fellow AAs. Hence, their saving of the fellowship from me and I saving it from them became an all-absorbing occupation. This, of course, resulted in anger, suspicion, and all sorts of frightening episodes. In this remarkable, and now rather amusing era of our AA affairs, any number of us commenced playing God ourselves all over again. And for some years, AA power drivers ran hog wild. But out of this fearsome situation, the 12 steps and the 12 traditions of AA were formulated. Mainly, these were principles designed for ego reduction, and therefore for the reduction of our fears. These were the principles which we hoped would hold us in unity and increasingly love for each other and for God. Gradually, we began to be able to accept the other fellow's sins as well as his virtues. It was in this period that we coined the potent and meaningful expression, "Let us always love the best in others and never fear their worst." After some 10 years of trying to work this brand of love and the ego-reducing properties of the AA steps and traditions into the life of our society, the awful fears for the survival of AA simply had vanished. The practice of AA's 12 steps and 12 traditions in our personal lives also brought about incredible releases from fear of every description, despite the wide prevalence of formidable personal problems. When fear did persist, we knew it for what it was, and under God's grace, we became able to handle it. We began to see each adversity as a God-given opportunity to develop the kind of courage which is born of humility rather than of bravado. Fear became an opportunity to develop the kind of courage which is born of humility rather than of bravado. Thus, we were enabled to accept ourselves our circumstances, and our fellows. Under God's grace, we even found that we could die with decency, dignity, and faith, knowing that the Father doeth of the work. We of AA now find ourselves living in a world characterized by destructive fears as never before in history. But in it, we nevertheless see great areas of faith and tremendous aspirations towards justice and brotherhood. Yet no prophet can presume to say whether the world outcome will be blazing destruction or the beginning, under God's intention, of the brightest era yet known to mankind. I am sure we AAs well comprehend this scene. In microcosm, we have experienced this identical state of terrifying uncertainty, each in our own life. It is no sense pridefully we AAs can say that we do not fear the world outcome, whichever course it may take. This is because we have been enabled to deeply feel and say, "We shall fear no evil, thy will, not ours, be done." Thank you for listening.